We're live. We got the Honorable DJ Hilson here for Straight Talk with DJ Hilson. How you doing today, DJ?
Listen, I'm excited about this format right here. I mean, I love the traditional setup that we have had for years, but I've done the StreamYard thing with Greg Roberts, and that's been a lot of fun. So I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity. I mean, I knew eventually I was going to get to that Judge Pittman status.
There you go.
and I know we're still working on some graphics. I mean, I appreciate that it, actually got my name, embedded there. That's a step in the right direction. But no, I'm fired up, man. This is awesome. Even though there is a certain dynamic when it comes to live in the studio that you can't replicate via the streaming. But that's okay. A little mixture of both is healthy, the way that I look at it.
So where are you? Are you in Wisconsin? You in Traverse City? You in North Muskegon, or are you at the county building? Where are you at right now?
I'm currently at your Florida house. Yeah. I mean, I figured since you were here in Muskegon, I could be there in Florida, and I appreciate that you don't hide your key very well. Thank you very much, and that you keep the refrigerator stocked. So
that part. The refrigerator part. Right.
Yeah. No, I'm in the friendly confines of the Hilson household right now, sitting at the kitchen table.
Wow. That's good. So before we get into business, I noticed you have a Detroit Lions and a Green Bay Packer sign. Is that just for TV?
So funny story. I was doing a Zoom meeting. I can't remember what for, but it was a Zoom meeting at home. And my wife, unbeknownst to that fact, I don't know why she didn't think they had the video camera on, but she snuck in behind me and then put up the Detroit Lions. That's the wall. What do they call those? I can't remember what they call those things. Wall, whatever. Anyways, so she snuck in behind me and put that up, and everybody's like, "Is that your wife?" I said, "Yeah," and then she kind of got embarrassed. So then my son, the middle kid, put up the Packer. Where's that? The Packer sign.
Okay.
Over here.
Yeah.
Put up the Packer sign. So it just shows that we're a divided household. That's all.
So is it really like that?
Yeah, I have not taken that. I have not taken this down. This has been up for months. And this is so every time that I usually sit in this spot when I'm at home doing meetings, and that always becomes my background.
So wow, I didn't know that. So Tricia is a Lions fan.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, I always thought the whole household was Green Bay Packer fans.
No, sir. Nope. She's got a Lions shirt. She roots for the Lions every time they're on, and punishes us when we root for the Packers. So I mean, it's
That's
it's
cool.
it's a happy household.
Wow. So let's get down to business. That trial in Minneapolis, Derek Chauvin, I think his name is, police officer.
Yeah.
They're doing jury selection right now. And I want to get your thoughts when you're picking a jury. What do you look for? Because there's a conventional wisdom. There's a, I guess, rumor has it that if there's a black person in that jury and you're charging a black person, you're trying to strike all black people from being on the jury. Is that true?
That may be true for some people. That's certainly not true for me. What I'm looking for is as I question the jury, during that voir dire process, and I know whatever the complex legal issues are, I really focus in on that. Or if there's a social issue that I need to ferret out, I focus in on that. And I want a jury that just understands the legal concepts that we're going to talk about, and more importantly, can keep an open mind. I mean, I use during my selection process all the time. I'll talk about open mind. I'll talk about being fair, and I'll talk about using reason and common sense. Those are common themes that you'll hear me say when I'm selecting a jury, and it really, to me, doesn't really matter. I mean, I've kept folks on that have had criminal backgrounds before. And it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what age you are necessarily. What race you are, what religion you are. As long as you can keep an open mind, as long as you can be fair and impartial, as long as you can use your reason and common sense when analyzing the facts compared to the law that the court's going to give you, you're going to be a great juror. Now, I mean, you know, I do my best to try to read body language. If somebody's really not interested in what I'm saying, or is not paying attention, or looks like they want to be somewhere else, then I'm going to bounce you, because obviously you just don't want to you just want to be there, and that's okay. I mean, there are folks that want to be jurors, and there are folks that just have no interest. And sometimes it's the subject matter. I mean, you know, sometimes the subject matter of the trial we're about to have hits people close to home, whether they themselves have been a victim of that particular crime, or family members, or people that they know, and they just honestly say, listen, given the case and what it's about, you know, in general, what it's about, I can't sit here because it's going to be too painful, too uncomfortable. And that's fine too. We don't want you to sit where you're going to be squirming in your chair every time, you know, somebody testifies. So, you know, certainly if you get deep into it, there's folks that, you know, say there's an art to it, that there's a science to it, and maybe there is, but I've always said, you know, in talking with folks, that maybe when I retire one day, I'm just going to be a jury consultant, because I think that's the biggest scam going. You know,
Right.
I'll charge a law firm a whole boatload of money to help them pick a jury, because what it comes down to, for me, what it comes down to is your gut. What's your gut tell you? What vibe are you getting? How is this person interacting with you? What questions are they asking? Are they not asking questions? When you ask general questions looking for just a head nod, are they nodding? Are they engaged in the process? And that's really ultimately what I'm looking for. And that's I think at a basic level what makes a fair and impartial jury. You know, and you know, certainly when you talk about more high profile cases like the one you're asking about, and certainly as I talked about on my radio show this morning, when I prosecuted Jeff Willis, that was probably the highest profile case Muskegon had seen in a long time. You know, certainly you've got to go at it from a different perspective. You've got to go at it from a different angle, and you've got to do things differently, because again, finding that fair and impartial juror becomes a little bit more difficult depending on, you know, again, when you talk about the subject matter or the media attention surrounding it, and how invested you have been during that time frame from when the incident happened until that point in time when the jury's being selected.
Wow. Is that video enough to convict former officer Shaven?
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly a strong piece of evidence to help convict, and I gotta believe that the prosecution team is supplementing that video with other pieces of the testimony. You know, for example, I would expect that you would be either talking to a medical examiner or a doctor as it relates to the placement of a knee in that neck area, and the significant damage that you can do, and how quickly or how slowly how slowly that damage then leads to death. I mean, if it were my case, that would be, I think, a critical piece of testimony, because, you know, certainly you can talk about 9 minutes, you can show that, but if the jurors only see that but don't understand physically what's going on, you know, that to me just kind of helps, I think, explain why the significance of why you don't see, you know, law enforcement training in that tactic, and the significance of the time. That to me would be a critical piece of evidence that I would want to have or to present to the jury. You know, they're talking about this case taking, you know, a month and a half, and so clearly the prosecution is going to present evidence just more than just that video. You know, again, for me, I would be saving that video probably for last. That would be one of the last things that the jury would see in my if it were my case. Mm-hmm. You know, because I think everybody's anticipating that video to be played, and I would want to set the stage with all that groundwork testimony first, and then play the video. And quite frankly, from a stylistic standpoint, if it were me, I'd hit play and I'd sit down and just and let the video play.
You won't even comment. You won't comment.
Nope. Because if you build everything up to that point, you don't have to say anything. The jurors have already got that foundational knowledge, whatever it be, medical testimony, the factual testimony. And for me, I would hit play. I would sit down, let it play out in its entirety, and then I would stop the video at the end, and I would say, I rest.
Right.
That's how I would do it. I think that's a powerful way to end that case.
Right.
And certainly, like I said, if you build everything up to that point, the jurors are now seeing that video in a whole different light, and to me, and maybe that's how they're going to do it. I don't know, but if it were me, that's how I would do it.
Today, Attorney General Dana Nessel charged a police officer from, I think it was Ionia County, for a shooting that occurred during a chase. Apparently, this car was coming towards him when he was out the vehicle, and he shot into the car, and I think one of the passengers got shot. She charged him today. Are you familiar with that case? Want to get your thoughts?
I briefly heard about it today, but I'm really not familiar with the facts. And I'm not familiar with everything that led up to the Attorney General making that charging decision. She's got some smart people in her office, and I'm sure they spent a lot of time evaluating it, looking at it, and felt that that was the right decision to make. And certainly, if in fact, as you indicated, the facts are that this car was driving at that officer, I'm assuming that they would have factored in the whole self-defense claim that's probably going to come if those are in fact the facts. Because again, cars are dangerous weapons. There's no question about it. You don't stand in front of a moving car at all. I mean, you just don't. And so if those are the facts, that'll be an interesting dynamic in how they maneuver that. But certainly,
I thought it was very interesting when I read that. Saying like based on the circumstances. Well, we'll see how that play out. You're listening to DJ Hilson live on radio, but also live on Facebook and YouTube. You got an online question from Connie Nasberry. Washington County newly elected prosecutor will no longer seek cash bail in criminal cases, saying it discriminates against poor people and perpetrates racial inequalities in the justice system. Please comment on how we can implement this in Muskegon County. Wow, that's great. That's interesting.
So I've had a chance to. I haven't had a chance to meet Eli Savitt in person. I've met him virtually in a couple of meetings from our association. He hasn't necessarily eliminated cash bail in its entirety. There are certain circumstances where his folks are asking for it. And so, I think you're going to see in the next coming weeks some new legislation that was passed from the jail task force, the statewide jail task force that I was a part of. That legislation was passed. It's being implemented on the 24th of March and April 1st. And a lot of that has to do with how courts are going to be setting bonds and using a system that essentially makes it a rebuttable presumption that a cash bond is appropriate. But, like anything else, there are certain circumstances where I think cash bond is absolutely necessary. If you commit the crime of murder, you are a public safety risk. Allegedly commit the crime of murder, you're a public safety risk. If you commit violent felony against women, you are a public safety risk, and cash bond and bail need to be assessed. I do certainly agree with the idea that all of our low-level misdemeanors and felonies need to be really evaluated by the courts as to how they're implementing a bail system. Because, quite frankly, if you commit the crime of retail fraud, there's no need for you to sit in jail awaiting your pretrial or trial. Some of the other low-level felonies, there's no need for you to sit in jail. So I'm certainly a proponent of being very good stewards of how we assess that system. But at the end of the day, it's not my system to run. It's the judges are the ones that make the calls when it comes to cash bail. And ultimately, the folks in the black robes are the ones that need to be held accountable to their bail decisions and their bond decisions. because all I am and my people in defense, all we are advocates in the courtroom saying yay or nay. And quite frankly, since I've been here since 1999, we've never had the ability in the prosecutor's office to attend arraignments on a regular basis. We just don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't have the resources. I don't have the personnel where I can sit somebody down in a courtroom from 9 o'clock until 4 o'clock just listening to arraignments all day, because our
So who
courtrooms,
does the arrangements?
judges. I mean, people get arraigned. It's the court's responsibility to arraign. We're only there as advocates to say yay or nay one way or the other, or to advocate for a position on bond, and that's all it is a position. Courts can agree with it or disagree with it, but the judges are the ones that are held statutorily and by court rule held responsible for setting bonds and bail. That's their responsibility.
So your staff do not attend bond hearings?
No. Nope, we're not there advocating one way or the other. The only time that you'll see us attend a bond hearing is on a serious case, like a murder case. Usually on all murder cases, we will be present during the arraignment. Other than that, so 99.7% of the arraignments, we are not present.
So that brings me back to this one case then, back in the summertime. Young kid charged with murder for homicide at the hotel. I think you're familiar with that case.
Yep.
I don't know how this happened, but the judge let him out.
Yep.
Judge Lattice let a person out who was charged with capital murder. Never seen it done. Let him out. And then I think within a few weeks, he's dead.
Yep.
What happened? What went wrong there? To me personally, I thought it was a disjustice to our community for this kid to be out on the streets, even though he's presumed innocent. You got video of the homicide, but he's presumed innocent to be out on the street. Seemed like the judge should have known that this was going to put this person at risk and other folks in the community at risk.
Well, again, that certainly wasn't on open murder cases. We always advocate for a high bond, and in that particular instance, the court did not agree with us. Set a relatively low bond. We also indicated to, and I think even at the time, his lawyer told the family, "Don't bond him out. Don't do it," and it was low enough where they could post the bond. And he was out. Now there were some things that were happening. I guess not to indicate that this was something that just randomly happened. There were things that were going on with this individual that kind of stoked the fire a little bit. But he was out, and ultimately, there was he was shot and killed, and his brother was severely injured.
Yes.
And so again, there is. And Paul, this. I mean, certainly when there are two sides a lot of times in cases like that. Certainly when somebody is alleged to have used a weapon like a handgun in a violent manner, that's a public safety risk, and bond should be set accordingly to that public safety risk. But on the other side of things, as you've been in Muskegon a long time. There are a lot of times those incidents create situations where it's pit one side against the other, and really for that person's own safety, it's almost better that they stay locked up until the criminal trial, because and this is a perfect example of where all that went wrong, and clearly the court, and I don't know why the judge set it so low. I mean, it was ridiculously low. In fact, we had another case that we charged with open murder just this week, and we had a judge set a $200,000 bond over our objection. And so
it was a murder case.
It was a murder case.
Where did the murder happen at?
In the projects.
I'm seeing a pattern, and I question this, and I know this is your show. I should be asking you questions, but I wonder if this would have happened in North Muskegon or Norton Shores, would the judge allow this person accused of murder to be out on a low bond? And I have to question that, because you see where this is occurring at, and you're allowing this person to come back into that community unprotected, and you know the victims are looking like, oh, you're going to allow this person to come back out, and you think they're not going to do anything? The judges and those decisions, in my opinion, the judges failed the community. And they should be held responsible.
Well, and quite frankly, I mean, I think, you know, it's a combination of a couple of things. There's been a lot of conversation over the last year about criminal justice reform, and certainly, you know, just like I go to conferences and seminars, the judges are going to the same things, and they're getting the same information, some of the same presentations, and you know, I think sometimes you let that kind of, you know, feed into your decision-making process. And again, we have to be careful. We have to also be mindful of the communities that we serve. And so I'm telling you that it is certainly, again, I am all about, and that was one of the reasons why I was chosen to be on the jail task force about a year and a half ago. I'm all about sensible reform. I think certainly folks do not belong in our jails because they can't afford to pay a $200 bond on a misdemeanor case. You know, that to me is silly and should never happen. But you know, again, I am a voice on the advocacy side. I'm not the ultimate decision maker as to what happens and how cash bond is set. That's a judicial decision, and it will always be a judicial decision. So. You know, I agree that, you know, certainly judges need to be held accountable, just like everybody else in the system needs to be held accountable, just like I'm held accountable every day. And you know, folks need to recognize that when they see something, whether it's a too high bond or a too low bond, that's a judicial decision, and judges need to be certainly need to be held accountable to that.
We got a few online comments and questions. Yeah. I'm gonna go to those comments. Pastor Rod Stevenson said, "What is the percentage of Muskegon County convictions that never make it to trial? So, what is the plea bargain percentage?"
Well, I mean, I want to be careful about how we're classifying plea bargain, because a lot of our convictions are pleas as charged and not a plea bargain. You know, certainly I certainly have to indicate that I have a very strict plea bargaining policy in my office, and we want to make sure that when we charge it, we're charging it fairly. I know you and I have had this conversation a lot of times, Paul, where I do not believe in overcharging. I think that is a silly practice and should never happen. We as prosecutors have to use our discretion very fairly and reasonably, and I've I think done that ever since I started as a APA 1 all the way to the elected prosecutor, that I will not have my folks overcharge people. We actually work on undercharging more than we would ever think of overcharging. So we look at how we charge it as a fair and reasonable practice, with the understanding that we're hoping that, you know, if the evidence is strong enough, that's going to lead to somebody entering a plea. And that's why, you know, we really try to strive for having a plea as charged, because we feel that we've charged the case fairly and reasonably at the outset. Now, that doesn't mean that as the case moves through the system and other things develop, whether it be, you know, we find a little bit more information about the person charged, or maybe the case isn't as strong as we thought it was, or, you know, we've got some folks that are having some second thoughts and want us to be a little bit more reasonable. Do we try to make accommodations there if justice requires it? Absolutely. So, I mean, I guess to directly answer the question, you know, I would say a majority of the cases that get charged end up in a plea of some kind. I'd say a majority of those pleas are usually plea as charged. And, you know, certainly with this last year and the pandemic, I mean, trials were shut down for a whole year. We're just getting ready to start trials again in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And so I would say on average, you know, when we were talking about cases that go to trial, and I should say this too, there's a big difference between district court and circuit court. You'll see a lot more cases go to trial in district court. A lot of times, majority of the times, bench trials. You'll see a lot of bench trials. Every week you'll see a case being tried, and the judge is the trier of fact. So those are our bench trials. You're going to see a lot of those. So a lot of those cases are being tried. You're going to see a lot of felonies that are ending up being pleas as opposed to trials. And so I would say, on average, we're probably trying on a non-COVID year, we're probably trying anywhere from, 15 to 20 cases a year. I think we're going to see an increase in that starting in March. So I think in the next year and a half, we're going to probably see an increase in the number of trials that we do in circuit court, just because we've got a year's worth essentially of backlog to kind of make up. But the overall year after year, you're going to see more cases ending up in a plea than you are a trial at the circuit court level, and more likely you're going to see more pleas than trials at the district court level. But I think you're going to see more district court trials than you are circuit court trials, and that's just pure volume. We have far more misdemeanors running through the system than we do felonies.
Wow. Okay. Donna Pennington posted a comment. I understand that there is a state representative, Representative Murdoch, who owns many A1 bail bonds location, who has blocked efforts to pass cash bail reform in the past. Will he continue to be so powerful? Is that true?
Yes, that is actually true.
Wow.
Yeah, representative. He's a Republican. I can't remember what district he represents. I've heard his name a couple of times in my discussions with some stuff that's happened, some legislation that we've been discussing over the last couple of months. But, I don't know how powerful he is, but he's in the controlling party right now. And certainly that does lend itself to at least you having the ear of your colleagues.
Right.
And certainly as long as that's the case, I can see him being a very powerful inside lobbyist, if you will, for that issue. And I've never met the man, so I don't know what he's like. I have heard his name, but I've never met him.
Wow. Didn't know that. So what the prosecutor did in Washington County, have you had a chance to study that and see what would it take for you to implement that here?
Well, I mean, it's his policy, and I haven't had a chance to really dive into a lot of the nuts and bolts of it. But ultimately, again, I think his policy, from what I remember, basically is that his folks aren't going to be advocating for cash bails. Like I indicated, it's not a prosecutor decision, it's not a defense attorney decision, it's a judge decision. And he must have the luxury of having people being able to be present, or at least somewhere near an arraignment. I just don't have that luxury. I don't have the ability to have somebody sit there and not skirt another responsibility and another courtroom responsibility. So, certainly his policies are certainly interesting. They're certainly innovative. And once I have a chance to actually really digest them and look at the ins and outs of it and personally talk to him, like I said, I haven't had a chance to really sit down and personally talk to him, and I'm anxious to do so. He seems like an interesting guy. We have maybe different philosophies on some things, but overall, I mean, I think he's got a good head on his shoulders, and so I'm looking forward to an opportunity to kind of pick his brain a little bit. But I haven't had that opportunity. And again, whether or not that's right for Muskegon County, that's something that I'm going to have to look into.
Right. Okay. Another online comment from Yakia, Miss White, familiar with this case. She says, my son was killed in the Heights, and I feel the Muskegon Heights Police Department was sluggish from the start. It went on for 4 years. The officer retired, then they pushed everything together. One of the people were caught 4 years later, and they only acknowledged she was on the run and didn't know. Then they played on her having an attention span of 11-year-old. I feel like it was unorganized and pushed to the side during COVID and hurried to the finish. I lost all faith in the police and judicial system in Muskegon. Any comments?
Well, I mean, I certainly, if Miss White wants to contact our office, I mean, we're happy to have that conversation with her. Maybe we already have, but from my standpoint, I would have to know a lot more of the investigation. I don't know if it was ever submitted, to our office for review or not. But
the case happened on I think 8th Street or 6th Street or 7th Street in Muskegon Heights. It's been a while, about 4 years ago, and
yeah.
On that would have been the west side of Muskegon Heights. And wow, I can't give you more specifics on the case, but I remember that, and might have been some friends who was responsible for his death.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, from my standpoint, when it comes to investigations, they're always unique in and of themselves. And over the years, we've been able to provide some supplemental help to the Heights Police Department through our Michigan State Police Major Crimes Task Force. That's still up and running, and they provide. They're there to help in these major investigations and assist where they're asked to. Again, I would have to maybe sit down with Miss White and look at the investigation and walk through it with her so that I can answer any questions that she has as to how the investigation was conducted, or what, if anything else, can be left to be done. From my standpoint, all cases are open until we get the information we need in order to make a charging decision. And you, again, Paul, you and I have had this conversation a lot, where it takes more than just the police running around trying to find people that know something about it. It takes the effort of the community, and those that might know something that happened, might have saw somebody that was present, whether they were involved or not. Even if they were just there and saw it go down, those are the people we need to talk to, because unfortunately, investigations are only as good as the evidence that they can collect. And a majority piece of that evidence is the statements of people that have knowledge of what happened. And we've worked hard to try and create that ability to trust talking to us, and whether and it doesn't have to be out in the open. It can be somewhere totally random. But
Right.
law enforcement needs to have that information in order to continue moving the ball forward on a lot of these investigations.
DJ, question for you.
Yeah.
Like resources, you bring up a good point. Muskegon Heights population now is probably about 10,000 people in comparison to Muskegon, which is approaching maybe 40,000. Muskegon got about 83 police officers. Heights got about maybe 20 max. On the weekend, clearly more traffic is in Muskegon Heights. When it comes down to going to places, and do they have the resources? And if they don't have the resources, who comes in and aid them in these investigations? Because if you don't have enough foots on the ground, it's kind of hard to get the information that you want when you don't have the staff.
Yeah, so this goes back a few years when Governor Schneider was governor, and Colonel Christy Eshu was the colonel of the state police. The governor designated Muskegon Heights as a secured city. And that designation came with cooperation with the state police to provide extra patrols at various times in the city. Now, what's interesting is that in a lot of other cities that got that designation, and I use Flint and Saginaw, Flint in particular is one. My colleague over there, Dave Layton, not only got the state police help, but got 6 assistant attorney generals to go along with that. I didn't get that kind of love, which is okay, but we certainly got some extra patrols for Muskegon Heights, and I believe that partnership is still in place today. And as I indicated, since 2013, we've had this specialized team that is made up of a Michigan State Police sergeant, a trooper. We often will have an FBI agent as well as a city detective, and their sole goal and mission is to assist in both fatal and non-fatal shooting incidents. And they've been relatively successful over the years in that assistance. And so we do have additional resources. On top of that, back in that 2013-14 era, we formed a sort of a cooperative, if you will, with all law enforcement agencies in Muskegon County. We called it the Major Case Task Force. And that allowed any agency who needed additional resources to sort of ring the bell. And we had 2 task force commanders who would then assemble units from all over the county, whether it be patrol or detective, and make decisions as to how many additional resources we need and what they were going to do. And that was extremely successful. We solved a lot of cases as a result of that task force team. And it gave, certainly other agencies in Muskegon County the ability to assist and be a part of an investigation that may not necessarily happen in their community. That really is still exists, but it requires the chiefs to say, you know what, I need the help. I need help. I need your assistance, and those folks will come running. As it relates to local jurisdictions and resource for them, that's a city council, city manager, mayor decision. They're the ones that allocate where the budget money goes, and they're the ones that the chief, whether it be fire or police, go to and say, hey, look, I need additional funds. I need to hire 5 more officers, or I need to hire 5, whatever the case is. That's where the funding source comes, and those were outside of this assistance that I'm talking about. The city is responsible for its police protection.
All right. Live with DJ Hilson, live on radio and live on Facebook and YouTube. You got a question or comment for DJ Hilson? You can't call in at 231-722-8338. Maybe you can call in and then let me know, and we'll ask the question for you. Or you can go to our Facebook page, like we've gotten so far. Some great comments today, great questions, DJ.
Yeah, listen. I mean, I always try to promote the phone number when I'm live in studio, and every once in a while we'll get a phone call. But certainly I appreciate the questions and the comments from the folks on Facebook. Might be a little bit easier, I guess.
Yeah, it's easier. Yeah, they that's all over the place. And Connie Nesbury said, "Thanks for the info." And that's
my
good.
pleasure. No,
Yeah.
it's always nice to hear from her. She's a she's a nice lady.
Definitely.
Yeah.
A big sis.
Well, I saw Troy's question about the percentage of different crimes.
Yes. So what are you seeing now? I know back in the day it was drug use, drug cases. Where are we at now?
That's certainly as we go from year to year, and this past year is so goofy. I mean, it's goofy for a lot of things, and the pandemic really has certainly skewed things. And quite honestly, what we saw, or what we've seen thus far, is that we've seen a reduction in the at least in the number of complaints that were filed this past year. And we're waiting to see what the final numbers are, but our preliminary numbers seem to suggest that we saw a reduction as opposed to a spike. But the percentage of different crimes, that's hard to, I guess it's hard to answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to probably do a little research and do some digging as to the number of cases that we've charged. But I think you can. It certainly is a spread across the spectrum, where we still are seeing some drug crime. We're still seeing certainly domestic violence that continues to be an issue that we're battling. We're still seeing some instances of violent crime, but certainly I think things seem to be going in a pretty good direction there, and I always knock on wood for that. But yeah, I mean, we're from my standpoint, I don't know of any spike in any particular area. We seem to maintain a normal plateau, if you will, of our incidents that we're seeing year after year, and then the categories of those incidents. They seem to be, like I said, there's no real huge spike in any one of those areas that we become concerned about. So I apologize, Troy. Hard question to answer, especially from my house, because I don't have the numbers in front of you. But I can say, overall, Muskegon has really, over the last, I'd say probably 6 to 8 years, really seen a decline, if you will, in overall crime. And that's something that we need to be very proud of. And that's certainly something that, a certain media market doesn't necessarily promote. So,
Right.
I think we as citizens of Muskegon County need to really be proud of the fact that things seem to be going in a very positive direction in a lot of different facets. And that, to me, that's why I love this community. That's why I think this is one of the best places to live in the state. And I will continue to fight for it every chance that I get, because I'm tired of people looking at Muskegon in a bad light, because we've been so far out of a bad light for a number of years that it's not even funny.
Exactly.
We need to be proud of that. We really do. We need to be proud and promote the fact that Muskegon County is where it's at. It's where you should be. And I'm hoping that as development continues to really blossom all over the place, that folks are going to recognize what we have recognized at my family for the last 21 years, that this is a diamond in the rough, and there's no other place that I'd rather be.
Some more comments. Connie Nesberry, in response to folks making comments online rather than calling in, she says, we're shy. People are shy. So that's why they don't call it.
Oh, come on, man. Listen, if I got to get up and do a dance or something and let people know that, this,
right.
Paul. I mean, we try to promote this all the time. I'm just a normal guy. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I recognize that, my position carries with it whatever weight people want to give it. But I'm telling you right now, I don't believe in titles. They give it to me because that's what comes with the job. But I'd like to think that over the years, I've been able to shed some of that perception that, anybody and everybody can approach me anytime they want. And I'm happy. Those are always my happiest moments when I'm walking either in and out of the building, the county building, and somebody will just come up and say, hey, how are you? And or I listened to your show, or you're doing a great job, or you're doing a crappy job here, and I want to talk to you about it. And those are some of the happy moments for me.
That's the best comment ever, right there on the screen.
Yeah, my mom. Listen, my number one fans, absolutely. No,
wow. Shout out to Mother Hilson. I take it she's in Wisconsin. Oh, that's Teresa.
there's my wife, Tricia.
Right. There you go. Pastor Rod Stevenson said,
yeah, I know. Answered like a politician. Thank you.
But he said he still love you. And
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. It really does. As a man of faith, I appreciate all that, because there are days when we need that. There's certainly days when we need that. So I do appreciate that very much.
It may sound like your wife was hooking up something in the kitchen, man.
Well, listen, I mean, she actually spent today. We had a family friend whose son had some minor surgery yesterday, and through our school, we'll get a meal train request. People either they there's a loved one who's in trouble or had surgery, and they need just meals, and so she spent the day making these great ham sandwiches that are ham. They're on like a dinner roll with ham and Swiss cheese, and there's a mixture that's Worcestershire sauce and mustard and poppy seed that you pour over it, and then you bake them so they melt. And so she made a bunch of that for our family friend and this family from school that needs some help. And that's what our dinner is tonight. So when I came home for lunch today, that stuff had already been made, and so the kitchen smelled great. So I'm really excited about what's on tap for dinner tonight, because it's pretty gosh darn good.
That's good. Here's another question for another pastor, Pastor Scotty McKinney. Kenley said, what is the plan to reduce gun crimes and drug crimes in the Black and brown community?
That's a great question. And I'll tell you, we've been trying to tackle that on a lot of different fronts. First and foremost, I think over the last several years, we've been really trying to build that law enforcement community trust through things that are happening with Rotary, from the diversity and inclusion group, the mixers. We were doing impact panels where all of the law enforcement community would gather in a space and invite the community for a town hall type discussion, and which led to breakout discussions. And we've been doing that for quite a few years. So trying to build that relationship. Me personally, that's why I've been doing things like this radio show for the past 8 years, again, to really build that respect and trust and communication in the community. Because ultimately, when we talk about how we're going to deal with the drug and violence, it certainly is a law enforcement issue that the law enforcement is there to try to address that, but it's also a community issue, and the community needs to recognize and understand that they have a lot of power when it comes to that. They have the power to root that out of their neighborhoods, and that to me is why we try to build those relationships with the community, so they understand that we're their partners, that we're standing with them right by their side when they're ready to have the courage to come out and root out that problem. And so we're going to continue to do that. The other aspect that has been recently developed that I've been working on over the past several months is as part of a subcommittee of the Social Justice Commission that I'm chairing on gun violence. We had a recent presentation from a strange partner, and that being Mercy Health. There was a resident and a doctor. The resident had been doing some research on gun violence in Muskegon County and written a paper about it and presented those findings to the subcommittee that I chair, with the understanding and the message being, here's what we have found coming through our emergency room departments over the last several years. Here's the breakdown in the age. Here's the breakdown in the race. Here's the breakdown in the location where the victims are coming from. And we recognize as a healthcare provider in Muskegon County, the major healthcare provider in Muskegon County, that we can hopefully be part of a solution. And so, without letting too many secrets out, we've been engaging in conversations with the University of Michigan and some doctors over there, as well as some practitioners, to roll out a couple of different potential programs that we're going to implement through the emergency room departments and hopefully some of our other healthcare facilities that will look at identifying individuals who may be on the brink or the verge of making a bad choice, and then intervening with some evidence-based solutions to hopefully, get them to go in a different direction. So I'm really, I tell you what, I've never been more excited about a direction in this area than I am right now with these conversations that we've been having, because, again, these are things that were being implemented on the east side of the state. And it just happened to be a building on relationships. It was a relationship I formed with these doctors, and then ultimately led to a conversation with these researchers and me just asking the question, hey, that sounds like a great thing. What you want to do it in Muskegon County?
Right.
Just being blunt about it.
Right.
We would love to have you come here. And that's led to now being a part of grant proposals and having conversations with other individuals in this area who really now see the need in Muskegon County and want to be part of that difference-making system. So I'm really pumped about this. That's on top of some of the things that have been done, with the Guns Group, the Gaining Unity Through Nonviolent Solutions. Dr. Pam Smith, Janet Robinson from the state police, who've been leading that group for the last couple of years, really trying to get the community to get engaged and get involved. I'll keep saying that till I'm blue in the face, that it's a group effort here. I go back to my comments about how great Muskegon County is. We need to value that. We need to value that no matter where you live, how great it is, and that we're not going to let these individuals who want to plague our streets with drugs, who want to plague our streets with violence, ruin that for us all. And again, the community is stronger in numbers than they think. And I get it that, there's fears about, people retaliating, and I understand that. But certainly we can't let that fear drive us into not taking action when now's the time. So I'm hoping that with, again, the relationship building, these programs that I'm very excited about that we're looking to roll out here in the next several months, as well as the community really getting into their heads this idea that we can save this community just like anybody else can.
Last question, because I know you got to go. You got another meeting. It's been about a year since the first marijuana, dispensary has set up in Muskegon County. Have you seen an increase in crime?
I haven't. I'll be honest with you. I haven't. I don't know that the percentages of operating under the influence have increased. I'd have to kind of go back and really specifically look for that. But certainly as of right now, that doesn't seem to be an issue. And I hope it never does. I'll be honest with you. I hope it never does.
Right.
That's the last thing we need. And since the law passed in 2018, I've certainly embraced it. And I'll tell you that we don't see hardly any marijuana cases. There'll be a little bit here and there. Typically, it involves minors. But other than that, we're dealing with, our problem right now is methamphetamine. That seems to be making a resurgence in our community.
Wow.
And so that seems to be our big issue right now. But other than that, business is going to be business, and certainly I know that some of the folks in that business have reached out and joined some community action groups, if you will, that I'm a part of, and I certainly appreciate that. They recognize that, if they want to equally exist in our community, they have to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, and that to me is really important.
All right, DJ, I'll let you do your sign off, man. I know you got to head to another power brokers meeting.
Now, I wish it were the case. I also sit on the planning commission for Laketon Township, and we have a special meeting tonight. One of the Wescos here on the north end wants to make some changes, and so you got to go through all the site. It's really, really, really exciting stuff that I get to talk about tonight. Site plans, drainage, concrete, all that kind of stuff. It's yeah, yeah. I mean, I would much rather watch some paint dry, but I still have my obligation. But no, listen, I appreciate this format. I mean, I like it. I mean, I appreciate the questions. I still actually I prefer being in studio, but I don't mind this. I mean, if that's gonna get people more engaged, that I certainly appreciate that. I mean, that's why we started this 8 years ago, right?
Right.
Is to create that engagement, and that's really important. So I appreciate the opportunity.
See you in a couple of weeks, DJ. You've been very good, man. 8 years went quick, man. You didn't have no gray hair, white hair back then.
No, listen, it's so funny. Just before I go, I've been asked, about the beard, and it's if you follow me on Facebook, it's Beard for Books. It's a United Way fundraiser to raise money for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and essentially the money that I raise by growing this beard is going to go put books in kids 0 to 5 hands every month. They get a book a month. And so the more money I can raise, the more books we can get in kids' hands. And so that's what this is all about. Because as you can tell, nowadays there's a little more white than there is dark. I think it ages me about 10 years.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
plus it's getting warmer outside, and what fool grows a beard when it's getting warm outside? That's the way that I look at it.
I mean, you care.
Yes,
about
sir.
It.
Oh yeah, man. Yes, sir.
I know you got to get your meeting. Thanks, DJ. Thanks.
Thank you. You're welcome. Good seeing you, Paul, as always, and look forward to our next encounter in a couple of weeks.
All right.
Be safe, Muskegon.